Rain slid off the saloon eaves like beaded curtains. Cinder Gulch held its breath. Lamps burned low. Cards slept in the hands of men who did not. The piano stood silent, keys dusted with the night. Then the door creaked. A woman stepped through, wet hat brim pulled low, a dark shawl clinging to her shape. Mae Calder crossed the floor like she was crossing a river with secrets beneath it. No one spoke. Boots shifted. A chair scratched the plank. She set a small leather satchel on the bar. Her eyes, grey as stormlight, lifted to the mirror, then to the rows of whiskey, then to the man in the corner who watched her without blinking. Rhett Hollis sat with his back to the wall. He had the posture of a man who expected bullets, and the calm of a man who had met them and kept walking. A scar made a pale hook near his jaw. His hat was old, his hands were careful. He lowered his glass and looked at Mae like he already knew her story. "Whiskey," she said. "Clean glass?" Tom, the barkeep, moved like a man afraid of breaking dawn. He poured. The saloon breathed again. Laughter tried to crawl back to life and failed. Rain tapped the windows. A lightning seam flashed over the mountains and stitched the sky shut again. Mae tasted the whiskey. It burned neat. It softened in her chest. Her fingers steadied. In the mirror, she saw Rhett rise, slow and natural, as if the chair had released him out of respect. He walked over. The room tilted closer. "You look like you have a town on your back," he said. His voice carried gravel and warmth. "You set it down yet, ma'am?" "Not yet," she said. "I plan to." His eyes slipped to the satchel. Not greed. Reading. Then back to her face. "Storm will keep men restless. Restless men do foolish things." "Do you speak from wisdom or habit?" "From the old road," he said. "Wisdom hitchhikes there sometimes." She almost smiled. Almost. She looked toward the door where the rain made its silver veil. "I only need a night. A quiet one." "In Cinder Gulch," he said. "That is a hard order." She took another drink. The whiskey went warm as a campfire. She let her shoulders drop a little. "I am not asking for forever. Only a bed that does not remember anyone's name." Rhett studied her. "Rooms upstairs. One has a lock that listens. I can see you to it." "You do that for every stranger?" "No," he said. "Just the ones who walk like they have outrun lightning." The piano gave a soft thump as if a ghost sat down to play. Cards slid again. Low talk. Tom polished a glass he had already made a saint. Mae lifted her satchel. The weight inside shifted with a small, undeniable clink. Rhett heard it. His eyes did not change, but he placed his body to shelter her as they moved, easy and uninviting, through the crowd. On the stairs, wood creaked under their boots. The air smelled of wet dust and lamp oil. A door opened somewhere, then closed like lips holding a secret. Rhett led her to the last room on the hall. He tried the knob. It turned, steady and willing. He handed her the key. "You do not ask," Mae said. "That is rare." "Questions are like knives," he said. "Useful, but they open what you cannot close." She looked past him. The room waited, clean enough, a bed with a quilt faded by other moons, a tin basin, a window with rain writing on it. The lamp wick was trimmed low. Her heartbeat slowed. "Thank you," she said. "Rhett, is it?" He tipped his hat. "Yes, ma'am." You aim to sleep here alone? Most of my life I have, she said. But tonight I would settle for safe. His face softened. The scar seemed smaller. I will sit on the hall a while, listen for trouble. You keep that lock company. She felt a warm pull in her chest at the offer. Not heat, a kind of gentleness she had forgotten. It surprised her, the way it made her want to set the satchel down and pour her story into the lamplight. But the night was young. Trust was a dry creek. It needed rain before it could carry anything true. "Why would you do that?" she asked. "Because you asked for quiet," he said. "And because I can hear men downstairs trying to grow a rumor out of thin air. They will come to feed it. Best if they find me first." Mae nodded. She stepped into the room. She set the satchel on the table, careful. Her fingers hesitated on the latch. The click would sound like thunder. She left it closed. She turned to Rhett. But then she whispered something small, the night seemed to say. Her voice found it. "Stay," she said, "only until the rain slows. The sound of it makes old walls feel honest." He looked surprised. A long breath moved his chest. He stepped inside and closed the door without sound. He kept his hat on. He stood near the window and watched the rain blur the lanterns below. "What is in the satchel?" he asked, "that sings like a coin choir but sits like a heart?" "Something owed," she said. "Something not mine." "You stole it back then." She felt a flicker of heat under her ribs. "I reclaimed what was taken. There is a difference." His gaze was a steady fire. "There is." Wind nosed around the eaves. The lamp made a soft oval of light. The rest of the room leaned into shadow. Mae slid off her shawl. Damp air touched her neck. She felt the night cool on her skin and the whiskey warming her, and inside the two temperatures met like hands finding each other. "Do men wait for you, Rhett Hollis?" she asked. "Downstairs, outside, in the next county." "Sometimes men wait," he said. "Sometimes the past does. It always knows the road." "Mine knows my footsteps," she said. "It will find me here." He turned from the window. His eyes held the calm of mountain ponds, dark and deep. Then tonight we let the rain confuse it. We breathe slower, we speak softer, we let the storm tell a different story. Her throat tightened. A memory moved like a horse in fog. A father's coat on a nail by a cold door. A promise broken by a man who smiled when he did it. A town that learned to look away. She felt it all, and then set it down just a little because he was careful with his voice. Rhett took the chair by the table. He faced the door. He settled like a sentinel. The curve of his shoulders was not threat. It was shelter. She sat on the bed and unlaced her wet boots. The quiet had a pulse. Rain, breath, a faint drip in the basin. "If I fall asleep," she said, "wake me if footsteps come." "I will. And if I talk in my sleep, I will only listen." She let out a small laugh she did not know she had. It warmed the room. She lay back on the quilt. The ceiling boards were old and clean. The lamp curled light into the corners. She listened to the rain write the alley into a lullaby. Her eyes grew heavy. Before sleep took her, she spoke again. "Rhett, if I leave before dawn, will you walk beside me to the edge of town?" "I will," he said, "but the rain is not done. and some men do not like to let night keep its secrets. Her eyes closed, her breath smoothed. He watched the door. Outside, a boot scraped, then paused. Voices swelled, then broke apart. A floorboard gave a warning. The knob twitched, soft as a thought, and went still. If this story has warmed a quiet corner of your heart, stay close. The night has more to tell. The door held its breath, and the rain whispered what would come next. The morning came slow, like it was unsure of its welcome. The rain had thinned to mist, a silver hush hanging over Cinder Gulch. Downstairs, the saloon breathed smoke and stale whiskey. But up in that corner room, Mae Calder woke to silence, and to the faint smell of coffee drifting through a cracked door. Rhett Hollis sat by the window, hat tipped back, mug steaming between his hands. His revolver rested easy beside him on the sill. The night's tension had drained from his shoulders, but not from his eyes. They still carried the kind of watchfulness a man never quite unlearns. Mae pushed herself up on the bed, quilt slipping down her arm. Her hair, damp from sleep, fell in quiet waves. For a long breath, she simply looked at him, at the shape of a man who'd stayed awake through the storm for no reward but peace. "You didn't leave," she said. "I don't leave before coffee," he answered, voice low and dry. "Is that a rule?" "It's survival." He handed her the second mug, strong, black, honest. She took it, fingers brushing his. The warmth leapt between them. Her heartbeat did something she hadn't given it permission to. They sat without talking, the rain whispering over the roof, the air smelling of gun oil and morning smoke. It felt like they'd both stumbled into something delicate, something that could shatter if either moved too fast. Finally, she said, "You heard them outside last night?" "I did." "And?" "They're not done asking about you." Mae's hand tightened around the mug. "Who sent them?" He studied her, the way a man studies thunder before it breaks. "You tell me." She looked toward the satchel, still closed on the table, her breath thinned. "A man named Sheriff Kellen Boyd," she said. "He calls himself the law, but he sells justice to the highest bidder. I used to keep his books. Then I found what he'd been hiding in them." "Stolen money?" "Worse," she said quietly. "Stolen lives. He sells names, women who owed debts, or made him angry." Rhett leaned back, jaw tightening. "And that satchel?" "Proof," she said. "Enough to bury him. If I can live long enough to get it to Fort Mesquite." He nodded once, slow, deliberate. "Then you'll need a horse that runs quiet, and a man who can shoot straighter than he talks." Her gaze met his. "Are you offering?" "I'm considering," he said, "but I've learned not to ride with ghosts unless they plan to stay visible." She smiled, faint but real. "Then keep watching. I don't fade easy." Outside, a wagon rattled past. Voices called. The day was waking, dragging its boots through puddles. Inside the room, time seemed to pause, caught between the world's danger and the small, unexpected safety they'd built in a night. Mae stood and gathered her shawl. The light touched her face, soft and gold. She turned toward him. "Why help me, Rhett? You don't even know me." He looked down at his hands. "Maybe I don't need to. Maybe it's enough to recognize the kind of running that never ends unless someone steps beside you." For a moment, no words existed. just the hum of something fragile, not yet trust, but close. Mae took a breath that felt new in her chest. She nodded once, like sealing a promise neither of them dared name. "Then we leave at dusk," she said, "when the shadows do the work for us." Rhett rose, slipped his revolver into its holster, and lifted his coat from the chair. "I'll get the horses ready. Keep that proof close." She opened the satchel at last. Paper rustled. The edges were burned, the ink smudged, but the truth still lived there. She could almost hear the voices of the women those numbers had buried. She closed it gently, like laying a hand over a wound that was still healing. Rhett turned at the door. "One thing," he said. "When we ride out, don't look back. The past is faster when you stare at it." "I stopped looking back a long time ago," she said. He smiled, small, quiet, maybe even believing her. Then he was gone, boots fading down the hall. Mae stood alone. She poured the last of the coffee, stared out at the rain-slick street, and let herself feel something she hadn't in months, the faint pulse of hope beneath the ache. But hope had footsteps. Below, a horse whinnied. Then a gun cocked. The sound cut through the saloon's morning lull like a blade through silk. Mae's heart jumped. She ran to the window and saw them. 3 men in grey dusters, the kind who worked for the sheriff when the badge wasn't enough. They dismounted slow, eyes up, faces unreadable. One of them carried a wanted sheet. Her name was on it. Mae's breath caught. Her fingers trembled on the curtain. Downstairs, the door banged open, and Rhett's voice, steady as an oath, said, "Gentlemen, you're early." If this story has stirred the dust in your heart, stay close. The storm is only beginning. The saloon went silent again. The kind of silence that knows a gun's about to speak. Mae held her breath by the window, the mist outside turning into a thin veil of rain once more. She could see the men below through the wavering glass. 3 shapes of trouble, grey dusters wet at the hem, faces half hidden under brims that looked too clean for honest work. Rhett stood in front of them, one hand on his belt, the other loose by his side, calm as ever, like he'd been waiting for a storm to have someone to talk to. The tallest of the 3 spit in the mud. "You Hollis?" "Depends," Rhett said, voice quiet as a church whisper. "Who's asking?" The man unrolled a damp piece of paper, the wanted poster. Mae's name inked in black, a bounty beneath it that could buy a ranch. Her chest went cold. "Sheriff Boyd's asking," the man said. "Got reason to believe the woman you're hiding upstairs took something don't belong to her." Rhett's jaw shifted, barely. "You believe every story a sheriff sells? Only the ones that pay?" The second man chuckled, mean and nasal. "We ain't here to talk, friend, just to collect." Rhett's fingers brushed the handle of his revolver. "Then you'd better earn it honest." Before another word found the air, the shot cracked, sharp, dry, final. It wasn't Rhett's. It came from the stairs. Mae had fired through the window, the bullet tearing the air beside the bounty man's boot. The ground spat mud. Every head turned upward. She didn't wait. She ducked back, heart pounding. Rhett didn't flinch. "Guess she don't like collectors." The tall man raised his rifle. Rhett moved faster. One twist, one pull. His gun sang twice. The first man fell, a dark bloom spreading across his shoulder. The others stumbled back, cursing. One fired wild. The mirror behind the bar shattered into rain light. Tom, the barkeep, dove for cover. Bottles broke. Smoke and thunder filled the room. Outside, horses screamed and kicked against their reins. The air turned to heat and noise. Upstairs, Mae grabbed the satchel and ran. The hallway smelled of oil and dust. Her breath came hard and sharp. Halfway down the stairs, Rhett's voice cut through the chaos. Low, steady, the kind of sound you follow even when the world's falling apart. "Back door!" he shouted. "Go!" She didn't argue. Her boots hit the steps, skirt twisting at her knees. A bullet grazed the railing, sent splinters flying past her face. She hit the ground floor and caught sight of Rhett, one hand bleeding, eyes like carved flint. He fired again, covering her. Mae darted through the kitchen, shoved open the rear door, and the cold rain met her like mercy. She ran for the stables, mud grabbing at her hem. Behind her, Rhett's footsteps caught up. Fast, sure. He slammed the stable door shut and threw the bar across it. The horses snorted and stamped. Rain thudded on the roof like 100 wild hearts. "You hurt?" he asked. "Just scared," she said. "Good," he said. "Means you're still alive." He pulled a kerchief from his pocket, wrapped it tight around his bleeding hand. The smell of gunpowder clung to both of them. Mae looked at him, really looked, and saw a man standing between her and every bad thing chasing her shadow. She didn't know if it was courage or foolishness, but it made her chest ache. "Why did you stay?" she asked, voice trembling. "You could have walked away before the shooting started." Rhett met her eyes. "I don't walk away from storms I've already named." For a moment she couldn't breathe. She wanted to tell him about Kellen Boyd, about the nights she spent hiding ledgers in flour sacks, about the friend who vanished after crossing the sheriff. But all she could do was look at him, soaked in rain and silence, and feel that impossible pull, danger wrapped in safety, fire cooling into calm. He moved toward the horses. "We ride now. The road to Fort Mesquite cuts through Devil's Hollow." "It's rough, but the sheriff's men won't follow that far in the rain." Mae nodded. She strapped the satchel to the saddle, fingers trembling. "You've been there?" "Once," he said. "Left a part of myself there. Don't mind visiting what's left." They mounted up. The stable door opened to grey light and drizzle. Rhett led, Mae close behind. The town shrank behind them, a handful of lanterns flickering through fog. As they rode out, thunder rolled distant and low, like the earth remembering their names. Mae glanced back once, saw the saloon's shattered window, the smoke curling out like breath. Then she faced forward again. "Rhett," she called over the wind. "Yeah?" "If you hadn't been there last night—" "I was," he cut in. "That's enough." The rain softened. The hills opened wide. The world smelled like iron and sage. Mae tightened her grip on the reins and followed the man ahead of her, a man she didn't know, but whose presence steadied the storm in her chest. They rode until the light turned gold behind the clouds. When they finally stopped at the edge of the canyon, the wind had gone still. Rhett dismounted first, scanning the ridges. Mae swung down beside him, boots sinking into the wet dust. "Devil's Hollow," he said, nodding to the dark pass ahead. "If we make it through before dawn, we'll have a chance. And if we don't?" He looked at her, the ghost of a smile under the brim of his hat. Then we make our own dawn. Her breath caught again, not from fear this time, but from something she didn't want to name yet. The wind rose, carrying the scent of rain and iron and whatever waited for them ahead. If this story has stirred a quiet longing beneath your western sky, stay close. The night still holds more to tell. The canyon opened before them like a throat, swallowing the last of the light. Devil's Hollow, narrow, twisting, wet with old secrets. The air smelled of iron and pine. Water dripped from black stone, slow and deliberate, like the earth keeping time. Mae followed Rhett's horse, single file. The path wound between cliffs, so close that the sky was just a thin ribbon of dusk above their heads. The horse's hooves echoed off the rock, sounding louder than it should have. Even the rain seemed to hold its breath here. "How far?" she asked quietly. "Far enough," Rhett said, "and close enough to trouble." "Always is," she said. "In my life, at least." He glanced back, the lamplight from his saddle glinting in his eyes. "Then you're in the right company." The road narrowed again, forcing them close. Mae's knee brushed his boot. The brief touch sent a small shiver through her. Not fear, not quite warmth either. Just a pulse of knowing she wasn't alone. After a while, he said, "You ever think about stopping?" "Running's all I've done since I learned the cost of staying." He nodded. "And the cost?" "Trust," she said. "It's always trust." The wind moved between them. It carried the faint sound of water deeper ahead, a creek cutting through stone. The horses picked their way carefully. Mae kept her eyes sharp, scanning the ridges. Somewhere above, a hawk cried once and went quiet. Then she saw it, a small campfire's ghost flickering between two rocks, half a mile ahead. Her breath caught. "Rhett!" He raised a hand, signaling stop. Both horses froze. He slid from his saddle, quiet as a whisper, and drew his gun. "Stay close," he said. Mae dismounted, holding the satchel tight. She watched him move forward, each step careful, balanced. A man used to walking through danger like it was part of the landscape. The rain had stopped. Only dripping water filled the silence. They came upon the fire, small, dying, ringed with stone. Around it lay 3 bedrolls and the remains of food. Empty bottles. A cigarette still smouldering. "Fresh," Rhett murmured. "Too fresh." Mae's throat tightened. "You think—" "They know this road. We're not the first souls through tonight." He crouched, touched a boot print in the mud. 4 men, maybe 5. One rides heavy. They'll be waiting ahead, maybe at the bend near the creek. Mae swallowed. "Sheriff's men?" Rhett straightened, eyes on the dark. "Or worse, Boyd hires anyone who can aim straight and lie without blinking." He turned to her. "You trust me?" She hesitated, not because she doubted him, but because the word still hurt to hold. "I'm learning to," she said finally. "That'll do." He doused the fire with his boot, then took her hand. The touch was warm despite the cold. His thumb brushed her knuckles, not by accident. "Stay behind me. If it turns bad, ride hard. Don't look back." Mae's voice came out steadier than she felt. "If it turns bad, I'll be the one beside you, not behind." His gaze lingered a second longer than the moment allowed. Then he nodded. Fair enough. They moved again, deeper into the hollow. The canyon curved left, the air colder now. Moonlight spilled thinly over wet rock, painting everything silver and ghost-like. The creek appeared, narrow, fast, its surface trembling with reflected stars. Rhett's horse crossed first, careful. Mae followed, the water brushing her boots. Then came the voice. Well, I'll be damned. The lady and her guardian angel. They froze. 5 men stepped out from behind the boulders, rifles leveled. One wore a deputy's badge that gleamed even in the weak light. The others looked like the kind of men who'd forgotten what right and wrong felt like years ago. Rhett didn't reach for his gun yet. "Evening," he said. The deputy smirked. "Sheriff Boyd sends his regards. He's tired of chasing ghosts." Mae's heart thudded. "Tell Boyd he'll have to keep running." The deputy's smile widened. "He figured you'd say that. That's why he told me not to waste a bullet. Said to bring you in alive. Doesn't much care what condition you're in." Rhett's voice dropped low. "You can try." The air cracked before anyone blinked. His revolver flashed 1, 2, 3 times. The canyon exploded with echoing thunder. Mae dropped behind a rock, clutching the satchel. Sparks flew from the cliff as bullets tore into stone. Horses screamed, rearing against their tethers. "Rhett!" she shouted. "Stay down!" he yelled back. But she couldn't. She saw one of the gunmen circling behind him, knife drawn. Instinct, or something deeper, made her move. She grabbed the fallen deputy's pistol, lifted it with both hands, and fired. The man went down hard, knife clattering on the rocks. Rhett turned, eyes wide for a heartbeat. Not in surprise, but something closer to respect. Then another shot tore his hat clean off his head. He ducked, fired back, and silence returned as quick as the fight began. Only the rain returned to fill the hollow's throat. Rhett stood, breathing hard, smoke curling from his revolver. 3 men down, the rest vanished into the dark. Mae lowered the pistol, hands trembling. "I've never killed a man," she said, voice breaking. "You still haven't," he said softly. "He'll live, but he won't follow." She looked at him, eyes glistening with shock and something deeper, the realization that the road ahead wouldn't forgive softness, not yet. He stepped close, cupped the back of her neck gently, grounding her. "Breathe, Mae. It's over." She did. Slowly. The world steadied again. Rain, breath, heartbeat. Rhett glanced at the bodies, then the ridge. "We can't stay here. They'll have friends." She nodded, silent. Together they mounted again, pushing deeper into the canyon. The rain thickened, washing the blood from the stones. Thunder rolled once, low and distant, as though the sky was mourning what it had seen. They rode until the moon climbed high. The canyon widened into a hidden meadow, small, ringed by cottonwoods. Rhett dismounted, tied the horses, and built a small fire beneath an overhang. Mae sat near the warmth, fingers still trembling. Rhett handed her his flask. "Drink." She obeyed, the whiskey burning a path down her throat. "Do you ever stop fighting?" He stared into the fire. "Only when there's something worth keeping." Mae's voice softened. "And what would that be, Rhett Hollis?" He looked up, eyes catching the firelight. "Still figuring that out?" The silence that followed wasn't empty. It hummed. Rain on leaves, crackle of flame, two hearts that had begun to listen to each other. She drew her shawl tighter, not from cold, but from the sudden awareness of how close he was, how safe she felt beside a man the world called dangerous. The firelight flickered across his face, carving gentleness from the rough lines. Mae felt warmth bloom where fear had lived. For the first time, she smiled, real, unguarded. "Thank you," she whispered, "for staying." Rhett's answer came quiet, almost lost under the rain. "For once in my life, I don't want to leave." If this story has touched a quiet place beneath your western sky, stay close. The fire's not done speaking yet. The rain eased before dawn, leaving a thin mist that clung to the meadow like breath that didn't want to fade. The fire had burned down to a slow glow, just enough to paint the world in amber. Mae sat wrapped in her shawl, staring at the coals as though the truth might rise from them if she waited long enough. Rhett was awake too, leaning against a fallen log, his revolver laid beside him, eyes on the horizon that hadn't yet turned gold. Neither spoke for a long time. The silence wasn't heavy now, it was patient, like the earth itself had decided to rest. When Mae finally broke it, her voice was soft. "You didn't sleep." Rhett shrugged. "Old habit. From the war?" He gave a quiet nod. "And everything that came after." She looked at him, really seeing him for the first time in the half-light. The scar that traced his jaw like a memory. The way the corners of his eyes held both shadow and gentleness. "You've seen too much," she said. He smiled faintly. "So have you." She drew her knees close, the fire's warmth seeping through the damp fabric. "Maybe that's why the quiet feels strange, like I don't deserve it." "You do," he said, steady and sure. "Quiet's for people who've earned it the hard way." His words settled in her chest like a small mercy. She turned toward him, the faint light catching her face. "And you, Rhett Hollis? Have you earned it?" He looked into the fire, the glow reflecting in his eyes. "Not yet, but I've stopped running from it." She smiled at that, then let her gaze fall to the satchel beside her boots. The leather was wet from the rain, the clasp tarnished. "Everything I've carried has been for someone else," she said. "Justice, proof, revenge. It all feels like noise now." "What do you want instead?" She hesitated. "Peace. Maybe a place where no one knows my name." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "And if someone wanted to know it anyway?" Mae met his gaze, the air tightening between them. "Depends on what he'd do with it." The fire popped, a soft spark breaking the dark. Rhett's voice dropped lower. "I'd say it now and then, just to remind myself what it sounds like when a woman survives." Something inside her trembled, something that wasn't fear. She looked away before the warmth in her chest could turn into something else entirely. "You talk like a man who's lost more than he tells." He took a long breath. "A wife once, a brother. The piece of myself that believed I could keep either safe." She didn't answer right away. The world outside their small fire felt wide and listening. Finally she said, "Maybe you're safer now. Sometimes being broken just means the bullets pass through easier." He looked at her then, long, searching, and for a heartbeat the night felt smaller, the air charged with something unspoken. He reached for the flask again, offered it. Their fingers brushed, neither moved. Mae's breath caught. The distance between them felt fragile, full of choices. He said softly, You should rest. We'll need to ride hard when the light finds us. But she didn't move. And you? Will you rest? He shook his head, almost smiling. If I close my eyes, I might dream, and dreams cost more than whiskey. She watched him for a moment, the glow outlining the strong lines of his face. Then she shifted, spreading her shawl beside him. Then don't sleep alone. He turned, startled by the simplicity of her tone. No invitation, just truth. She didn't touch him, just sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders shared the same warmth from the dying fire. And minutes passed like that, quiet, easy, the kind of silence that felt earned. Mae's voice came again, barely above a whisper. I used to believe love was danger dressed as safety. Now I don't know what to call it. Rhett looked toward her. Maybe it's the moment you stop reaching for your gun. That made her laugh, soft, tired, real. And you? You ever stop reaching? He looked at her hands, at the faint tremor still lingering there. Maybe right now. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of sage and wet earth. Mae closed her eyes. For the first time in months, her body loosened. Her head tilted slightly, resting near his shoulder. He didn't move away. The fire hummed its low song, and the world finally felt still. When dawn broke, it painted her hair in gold. Rhett glanced down at her sleeping beside him, and something unspoken passed through his chest, a tenderness he hadn't earned but wanted to keep. He stood quietly, draping his coat over her shoulders before stepping away to saddle the horses. The light found him in motion, a silhouette against the red sky. For a moment he looked almost peaceful. Then the crack of a rifle tore the morning apart. The bullet struck the ground near his boots, spraying dust. A second followed, closer. He spun, scanning the ridge above. Mae woke with a start, the echo still in her ears. "Rhett!" "Down!" he barked, drawing his revolver. "They found us!" 3 riders appeared on the high trail, shapes in the dawn mist, rifles glinting. Mae grabbed the satchel and ran for the horses. Rhett fired once, twice, driving them back. "Mount up!" he shouted. The horses reared, snorting in fear. Mae swung into the saddle, heart hammering. Rhett leapt onto his, blood streaking his sleeve from a graze. He gritted his teeth, eyes hard. "Ride for the river," he called. "They'll lose our trail there." Mae didn't argue. The horses plunged into the narrow pass, hooves thundering against wet stone. Behind them, gunfire echoed through the canyon. The morning light burned brighter, scattering across the rain-wet rocks. Mae looked back once, saw the smoke, the flashes of gunfire, and Rhett's shape cutting through it all like a promise. And then, for the first time since she'd met him, she was afraid not of dying, but of losing him. If this story has stirred the wind in your chest, stay close. The dawn has only begun to tell its truth. The river cut through the land like a silver blade. Mae's horse splashed into the shallows, hooves striking sparks of light off the water. Rhett was close behind, blood soaking his sleeve, jaw tight but steady. Bullets hissed off the rocks above them, angry hornets chasing ghosts. "Keep low!" he shouted. Mae ducked, gripping the reins hard, the satchel thumping against her leg. The cold spray hit her face, sharp as glass, but she didn't slow. The river curved ahead, vanishing into a narrow gorge flanked by walls of red stone. They burst through it, the echo of hooves and gunfire folding into the canyon's roar. Then, silence. Only the rush of water and the pounding of her heartbeat remained. Rhett pulled his horse to a stop behind a cluster of boulders. "We lost them." Mae turned, chest heaving, eyes wild. "You're bleeding." He looked down at his arm as if noticing it for the first time. "Just a scratch." "It's not just a scratch," she said, sliding off her horse. She tore a strip from her skirt and stepped toward him. "Sit, before you fall." "I don't fall easy." "You do when I say so." That earned a faint smile, the first since the shots. He dismounted, sank onto a rock, and watched as she wrapped the wound with careful hands. The touch was gentle but firm. Her breath brushed his skin. The scent of rain and wild sage clung to her hair. Rhett's voice came low. "You've done this before." Mae nodded. "The sheriff's men taught me. I used to patch them up after their bar fights." He studied her face, the fierce calm behind her eyes. "You should have been a doctor." "I was never given the choice." He said nothing, but his hand lifted, rough fingers grazing her wrist, steadying her trembling. "You're shaking." She laughed softly. "So are you." He didn't deny it. For a long time, neither spoke. The canyon hummed around them, water whispering, wind threading through stone. Then Mae tied the last knot and stepped back. "That'll hold," she said. "Until it doesn't," he murmured. She met his gaze. "Until we're safe." He looked away, toward the river bending into the distance. "Safe's a word this land doesn't understand." Mae knelt by the water, rinsing her hands. "Then maybe we teach it." Rhett watched her reflection ripple and reform in the current, a woman who'd lost too much but still found a reason to care. The kind of courage he'd forgotten existed. He stood, testing his arm. "We'll follow the river east. There's a mining town a half-day out, Hollow Bend. They won't expect us to head that way." "Do you know anyone there?" "Maybe," he said. "Depends if she still wants to see me." Mae raised a brow. "She?" He gave a dry smile. "The blacksmith's widow. She patched me up once, too." Mae tried not to react, but something sharp flickered under her ribs. "Sounds like you have a type," he chuckled. "Breathing, mostly." The sound loosened the weight between them. Mae found herself smiling despite the ache in her chest. "Then I suppose I'll do." He looked at her, really looked, and the humor faded into something quieter, heavier. "You do more than that." The air between them shifted. The morning light cut through the canyon, turning her hair to gold. His hand rose, almost unconsciously, tracing the air near her cheek without touching. She didn't move away. For a moment, it was just the two of them. Two fugitives, two scars, two hearts trying to remember what trust felt like. Then she whispered, "Rhett, why are you still here?" He hesitated. "Because leaving you feels like something I've already done once. And I promised myself I wouldn't make the same mistake twice." Mae's throat tightened. She wanted to ask what he meant, who he'd lost before. But his eyes told her it wasn't a story he could speak yet. So she just said, "Then don't." He took a step closer. "I won't." The river wind moved between them, carrying the faint scent of juniper and wet stone. The horses shifted behind them, snorting softly. Mae felt her pulse steady, not from calm, but from something deeper, a rhythm that matched his. Then a sound broke the stillness. Distant thunder, though the sky was clear. Hoofbeats. Not one horse, but many. Coming fast. Rhett's hand went to his gun. They found the trail. Mae looked toward the bend. Dust rose beyond the rocks. How many? Enough to make this a bad place to die, he said. Come on! They mounted again, spurring the horses along the riverbank. The path narrowed, water splashing their boots. The canyon widened ahead, spilling into open desert, a horizon stretching endless and pale beneath the rising sun. Behind them, the thunder grew louder. Mae glanced back and saw them. Half a dozen riders cutting through the gorge, rifles flashing in the light. "Rhett!" she shouted. "They're gaining!" He looked ahead, scanning the cliffs. "There!" He pointed toward a narrow ridge. "Trail to the mesa. We can lose them up there." They veered off, hooves pounding through loose shale. The climb was steep, the horses straining. Mae's breath came in ragged bursts. Rhett rode ahead, guiding the way, his body moving with the rhythm of the animal like it was part of him. At the top, they burst into sunlight. The mesa spread wide, dust and cactus, and nothing else. Below, the riders slowed, their horses refusing the climb. Rhett pulled his horse to a stop, breathing hard. "We've got a head start. Let's make it count." Mae nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. "You think they'll quit?" He glanced back at the trail. "Men like that don't quit, but they tire, and I've got more reason to keep riding." She smiled, though her voice trembled. "You sound like a man who's already decided." "Maybe I have." The wind tugged at his coat, the morning stretching endless around them. They rode east, the sun climbing behind their backs, the desert beginning to glow. For the first time, Mae felt the world open. Dangerous, yes, but wide enough to hold a new kind of hope. Still, she couldn't shake the image of the riders below or the shadow of Sheriff Boyd waiting somewhere ahead. She looked at Rhett, the blood drying dark on his sleeve, the stubborn calm in his jaw. He noticed her gaze and nodded toward the horizon. "Don't look back," he said. "The past can't follow if you don't feed it." Mae breathed deep, the desert air hot and wild in her lungs. For a moment she believed him. But as the sun rose higher, painting the world in fire, a thin column of smoke appeared in the distance, a signal, dark and deliberate. Rhett saw it too. His face hardened. "They're calling ahead," he said quietly. "Boyd knows where we're going." Mae's hand tightened on the reins. "Then we ride faster." He turned to her, eyes fierce beneath the brim of his hat. "No, we ride smarter." The wind swept between them, carrying the first scent of heat. The day had only begun, and so had the hunt. If this story has burned a quiet spark in your heart, stay close. The desert hasn't finished whispering its secrets yet. By noon, the desert had turned white with heat. The sun burned without mercy, and the horizon wavered like a mirage. The horses moved slower now, their flanks dark with sweat, each breath heavy as the air itself. Rhett led them toward a jagged line of cliffs in the distance, his eyes scanning the land with a soldier's instinct. Mae followed close, her shawl pulled tight against the glare. They hadn't spoken in hours. The silence wasn't anger, it was survival. Words wasted water, and both knew how rare quiet could be when death was close behind. When the first shimmer of an old mining shack appeared in the distance, Mae's breath caught. "Shelter?" Rhett nodded. "Or a grave. We'll find out soon enough." By the time they reached it, the sun was leaning west. The shack stood crooked against the rock wall, its boards sun-bleached and brittle. A rusted sign beside it read, "Calico Vein Mine. Closed. 1871. The wind hummed through its broken doorway like a ghost clearing its throat. Rhett dismounted first, gun drawn, eyes sharp. He pushed the door open. The smell of dust and forgotten iron filled the air. "Empty," he said after a moment. "At least for now." Mae slid from her saddle, her legs weak. "Then it's perfect." She stepped inside, light cutting through the cracks in the wall like thin blades. The air was cooler, though it smelled of thyme and rust. Rhett leaned his rifle against the wall, then crouched near the old fireplace, checking for dry wood. There was enough for one night. "You think we'll be safe here?" she asked. "Safe's not the word," he said, "but it's the first roof that doesn't leak." Mae smiled faintly, lowering herself onto a crate. "You sound like a man used to disappointment. I'm used to what's real." He struck a match. "Disappointment's just the shape of truth in these parts." The flame caught. Warmth flickered across the room. Shadows stretched and retreated, painting gold along her cheekbones and the curve of her neck. Rhett looked away, busying himself with the fire, though his pulse told on him. She saw it, and didn't look away. "You've been quiet since the canyon," she said. Trying not to think," he answered. "And failing." He smiled, small and tired. "You make that difficult?" She tilted her head. "Because I talk too much?" "Because you remind me of things I put in the ground a long time ago." Mae leaned forward, the firelight catching her eyes. "Then maybe they're not done growing." He looked at her, really looked. For a long moment, the world outside disappeared. No riders, no smoke, just the sound of wood crackling and two people caught between what they feared and what they wanted. "You don't know what I've done," he said. "Then tell me." "I can't." "Won't," she corrected softly. The words settled between them like dust. He turned toward the fire, jaw tight. "After the war, I worked for men like Boyd, men who called their greed law. I carried out orders I didn't believe in, until I couldn't anymore. I walked away. But the past don't forgive quitting." Mae's voice dropped. "Then maybe I met you at the right time." "Or the wrong one," he said. She rose, crossing the floor until she stood in front of him. The firelight trembled between them. "You think running is wrong? Because that's all I've done since I took this satchel. And yet, sitting here, I don't feel like I'm running anymore." Her hand brushed his shoulder, light, almost accidental. His breath caught. Her fingers paused, then lingered. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "Not the arm," he said. She smiled, soft but knowing. "Then what?" He didn't answer. Instead, his hand lifted, finding her wrist, holding it gently. The silence deepened, full of everything neither dared name. When she didn't pull away, he rose slowly, eyes never leaving hers. The distance closed, like it had been waiting all along. "Mae," he said quietly, her name a prayer that burned in the space between them. She looked up at him, voice trembling. "You keep saying my name like it might save you." "Maybe it already has." The wind sighed through the cracks in the wall. Her shawl slipped from her shoulders. He caught it before it fell, his fingers brushing her skin. For a heartbeat, the world felt balanced. The desert outside endless and cruel, the moment inside small and alive. She whispered, "What happens if we stop pretending we're only surviving?" Rhett's eyes softened. "Then we start living, even if it's just tonight." She didn't answer with words. Her hand found the side of his face, tracing the scar like a map back to something human. He leaned into the touch, a man who hadn't known gentleness in too long. The kiss came slow, careful. It wasn't fire at first. It was recognition. The kind that finds its way through years of silence. When it deepened, it wasn't hunger that led them. It was the need to forget fear for a while. The fire cracked louder, its light spilling across the walls, touching every scar, every secret, every part of them that had refused to die. When they finally pulled apart, the world outside was dark, and the storm of pursuit felt far away. Mae rested her forehead against his chest, his heartbeat steady under her ear. Rhett exhaled, one hand in her hair, the other steady at her back. "This won't last," he said softly. "I know," she whispered. "That's why it matters." They stood like that until the fire dimmed, the night folding around them in quiet promise. Outside, coyotes sang somewhere beyond the cliffs. Inside, two souls who'd forgotten tenderness found it again, even if just for one fragile night. Rhett's voice came low, just before sleep claimed them both. "When the sun rises, we ride east. We finish what we started." Mae murmured, half dreaming. "And if the world catches up?" He brushed a kiss against her hair. "Then we give it a reason to remember us. If this story has set a quiet flame beneath your heart, stay close. The dawn will find what the night has begun." The morning light slipped through the cracks of the shack, soft and gold. Dust danced in the beams like tired stars. Rhett woke first. The fire was nothing but grey ash now, still warm enough to remember. Mae slept beside him, one hand resting near his chest, her breath steady and small. For a man who'd forgotten what peace felt like, the sight of her was almost too much to bear. He lay still for a long moment, listening, to the wind, to her breathing, to the steady silence that felt like a promise he couldn't keep. Outside, the desert was quiet, too quiet. He rose without a sound, careful not to wake her. Through the slats in the wall, he scanned the horizon. Nothing moved but heat, no riders, no dust. For the first time in days, the world looked still, and stillness, he knew, could be a trap. He pulled his coat on, wincing as the wound on his arm tugged. The bandage was stained dark, but holding. He holstered his revolver, checked the horses through the open door. They grazed in the sparse brush nearby, calm. That, more than anything, made him uneasy. Behind him, Mae stirred. "You're up early," she murmured, her voice rough with sleep. "Never learned how to sleep late," he said, still watching the horizon. She sat up, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. "Did you dream?" He turned slightly. "No, that's the mercy of a tired man." She smiled softly. "Then maybe you're due for a dream or two." He stepped back inside, the light tracing the lines of his face. "Dreams get people killed out here." Mae looked at him. the corner of her mouth lifting. So does living. Their eyes met. That quiet pull, the one that had started in the saloon and deepened through every mile, was there again, steady as breath. For a second, neither looked away. Then Rhett said, "We ride in an hour." She nodded, standing to tie her hair back. "And after that?" "Fort Mesquite," he said. "You hand the satchel over to the judge, make it official." "And you?" "I disappear." The words hit harder than either expected. Mae froze, fingers stilling in her hair. "Disappear," she repeated. "Just like that." He didn't meet her eyes. That was the deal from the start. Her voice softened, low and edged with something fragile. "You think that's all this was? A deal?" He turned, met her gaze at last. "I think it's the only way either of us walks out of this alive." Mae stepped closer. "You've been watching my back since the moment we met. You've bled for me, killed for me. Don't you dare tell me it meant nothing." He said nothing, jaw working, eyes hard, but something behind them cracked. "It meant everything," he said finally. "That's why I can't stay." "Why?" she whispered. "Because everything I care about ends up buried." "I won't add you to that ground." Mae's throat tightened. "You think you get to choose that for me?" He turned away, staring at the door. "Someone has to." The air between them went heavy, filled with everything they couldn't say. The desert wind whistled through a crack in the wall, soft and mournful. Finally Mae spoke, voice breaking. "If you walk away, Rhett Hollis, you'll just be another ghost that never finished what he started." He froze, because she was right. Every mile, every bullet, every heartbeat since Cinder Gulch had led to this. He'd spent a lifetime running from his past, only to find it looking back at him in her eyes. Before he could answer, a sound cut through the stillness. A distant echo, hollow and sharp. Hoofbeats. Many of them. Rhett's instincts flared. "Mae," he said quietly. "Grab the satchel." She didn't argue. Within seconds they were outside, throwing the saddles on the horses. The sound was closer now, a whole column moving fast across the flats. Mae looked to the horizon, a thin, dark line of riders cresting the ridge. Her stomach dropped. "How?" "They must have tracked the horses' prints," Rhett said. "Boyd's men know this country too damn well." She swung into her saddle. "What now?" He tightened his reins, voice steady but low. "Now we finish this." They spurred the horses east, dust rising behind them. The sound of pursuit swelled, voices shouting, rifles cracking through the dry air. The old shack disappeared behind them, swallowed by the heat haze. Rhett led her through a narrow ravine where the river once ran, long dry now. The path twisted between high walls of sandstone. Bullets pinged off the rock, throwing shards into the air. Mae ducked low. "We can't outrun them." "Not planning to," Rhett said. He pointed toward a cluster of old ruins ahead, the remains of a burned-out way station. "We make our stand there." Mae's eyes widened. "Rhett, it's the only way," he said, voice firm. "If we keep running, we die tired. Here, we have a chance." She looked at him, heart hammering. "Then I stay with you." He met her gaze, No argument this time. I was counting on it. They reached the ruins, dismounted fast. The sun beat down hard, the world a haze of dust and light. Rhett took position behind a stone wall, loading his revolver with calm precision. Mae crouched beside him, clutching her small pistol, the satchel beside her boots. "They'll circle from both sides," Rhett said. "When they do, wait for my mark. Aim for the horses first." Mae nodded, hands trembling. "And if we don't make it?" Rhett turned to her, eyes fierce and soft all at once. "Then they'll know we didn't run." The first riders appeared through the glare, shapes on the horizon, rifles raised. Mae took a slow breath, trying to still her heartbeat. Rhett's voice came low beside her ear. "Whatever happens, you keep the satchel safe. Promise me." "I promise," she said. He reached over, brushed his fingers against her cheek. Brief, rough, full of meaning. "Then, let's make the desert remember our names." The riders charged. The air filled with thunder. Rhett fired first, the sound splitting the heat like lightning. Mae followed, her shot taking a man from his horse. Dust exploded. Screams echoed. Hooves thundered. Gunfire rolled across the plain, louder than the storm they'd left behind. And through it all, Mae heard her own heartbeat, wild, certain, alive. If this story has echoed something fierce in your heart, stay close. The storm isn't done breaking yet. The air burned with dust and gunfire. Rhett's revolver cracked again, sending a rider spinning from his saddle. Mae fired beside him, the echo of her shot swallowed by the desert's roar. Bullets tore into the stone around them, spraying chips of rock and heat. The old way station had become a fortress of ghosts, and it felt like the ghosts were on their side. Rhett ducked, reloading quick. "4 left!" he shouted over the noise. Mae glanced through the smoke. "Make it 3!" She pulled the trigger again, and one of Boyd's men tumbled from his horse, rifle clattering to the dirt. The last few circled, firing wild. Rhett grabbed Mae's arm. "Move!" They sprinted for the back wall just as a bullet split the air where her head had been. Dust and heat swallowed them whole. Rhett shoved open a half-broken door, guiding her into the shadows of the back room, an old storage shed where sun cut thin lines through the roof. Mae pressed against the wall, breathing hard. Her ears rang. Her chest felt like it was full of thunder. Rhett checked his gun. 2 bullets left." She nodded, voice shaking. "I've got one." He looked at her, the fear, the grit, the stubborn spark still burning in her eyes. "That's enough." Outside, the sound of hooves slowed. Silence again, the kind that feels like someone watching. Then came the voice, steady, cold, and far too familiar. "Mae Calder," it called. "You're a hard woman to find." She froze. "Kellen Boyd." Rhett's eyes narrowed. "The sheriff himself." "Put down your guns," Boyd's voice echoed, smug as a sermon. "You've run long enough. You've got something of mine. And I've got enough men here to make sure you don't ride out of this hollow." Mae stepped toward the doorway, anger slicing through the fear. "You mean something that never belonged to you?" His laughter was sharp. "Now, don't rewrite the story, sweetheart. You took what you didn't earn, and you dragged another fool down with you. Let's end it clean. Come out. Give me the satchel, and I'll make sure your death is quick." Rhett moved to the window, peering through a crack. 6 men. Boyd at the center, white hat gleaming like a lie. "He's bluffing," Rhett said. He wants that proof more than he wants your body in the dirt. Mae clenched her jaw. Then he'll get neither. She opened the satchel, pulling out the ledgers, the papers smudged with the sheriff's signature, and the list of names. Every woman he'd sold, every life he'd broken. "These are what he fears," she whispered. "If we burn them, he wins. If we die, he wins." Rhett looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Then we make sure someone else gets them." "Who?" she asked. "There's no one left we can trust." He hesitated. "There's a man in Mesquite, Marshall Ellison. I rode under him once. Honest as a preacher, mean as the desert. If anyone can bury Boyd's name proper, it's him." Mae blinked. "Then you're going to ride for Mesquite?" He met her gaze, quiet and steady. "No, you are." She shook her head. "I'm not leaving you." "You are," he said. "Because if we both stay, this ends here." She stepped closer, voice trembling with anger and grief. "I didn't come this far just to bury another man. Her words broke, swallowed by the dust in her throat. Rhett reached out, cupping her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You said once you wanted peace," he whispered. "This is how you earn it. You live. You finish it." Outside, Boyd called again. "Last chance, Mae. Step out, or I'll come in and drag your friend out piece by piece." Rhett pulled his bandana from his neck, tied it around the satchel, and pressed it into her hands. "Ride north, through the dry flats. The old telegraph road will take you to Mesquite by dawn. Give this to Ellison. Tell him Rhett Hollis paid his debt." She shook her head fiercely. "No, we go together." He smiled, that small, worn smile that had followed her through every storm. "We already did." Then he leaned in and kissed her, not desperate, not fleeting, just deep enough to say everything he couldn't. She held on to him, fingers tangled in his coat, trying to memorize the shape of him before the world tore it away. When he pulled back, his eyes were steady. "Go, Mae." Tears burned in her eyes. "Rhett, now!" He turned toward the door, revolver raised. She wanted to fight him, to stay, to die beside him if she had to. But his voice had that unshakable stillness that comes from men who've already made their peace. She ran to the back, mounted her horse, clutching the satchel. Through the haze of dust and sunlight, she looked back one last time, saw him standing in the doorway, framed by firelight and shadow. Then she spurred the horse and rode. Behind her, gunfire split the air. Rhett stepped out into the open, facing Boyd and his men with nothing but 2 bullets and a heartbeat that no longer feared its end. The sun hung high above, blinding white. The sheriff smirked. "1 man against 6. You must be dumber than I thought." Rhett smiled back. "You talk too much." The first shot dropped the man nearest Boyd. The second took another's shoulder. Then Rhett moved, fast, deliberate, fearless. His revolver clicked empty, but he kept walking, drawing Boyd's aim. The sheriff fired. The bullet struck Rhett square in the chest. He stumbled, but didn't fall. Boyd raised his gun again, and Rhett's knife flashed, silent as wind. It found the sheriff's throat. The sound it made was the last honest one the desert heard that day. Rhett sank to his knees beside the man he'd just killed. Blood spread like a slow sunrise across the sand. The wind rose, carrying the scent of dust and gunpowder, and peace. He smiled once, faint and almost free. Far away, Mae's horse thundered north, her tears mixing with the dust, the satchel pressed against her heart like a promise she refused to break. If this story has reached the quiet ache inside you, stay close. The dawn is waiting to finish what love began. The desert at dawn looked nothing like the night that had birthed it. The air was still, the horizon pale as bone. Every color had gone quiet, gold turning to silver, red to ash. Mae rode through it like a shadow that refused to vanish, her horse lathered with sweat, her eyes burning from the wind. The satchel hung against her chest, lighter than it had ever felt, though she knew the truth inside it still carried the weight of blood. She didn't look back, not because she wasn't haunted, but because she knew if she turned, she'd never stop riding toward the place she'd lost him. By the time the sun crested the ridge, Fort Mesquite was in sight, a scatter of roofs and smoke against the horizon. Civilization of a kind. The first she'd seen in weeks. Her body ached, every heartbeat echoing Rhett's last words. "You live. You finish it," she whispered into the morning. "I'm trying." The town stirred awake as she rode down the main street. A few men paused at the sight of her, a woman in dust-stained clothes, hair tangled, eyes hollow but burning. She ignored them all and stopped in front of the marshal's office. Marshal Ellison stepped out before she could knock. Tall, grey-bearded, with the kind of gaze that measured truth before it believed it. "Can I help you, ma'am?" She dismounted, unsteady, holding the satchel tight. "Name's Mae Calder. I have something that belongs to justice." That got his attention. He took the satchel, opened it slow, and his eyes darkened as he read. "These are Boyd's ledgers," he said. "I thought these were burned." "Almost were," she whispered. "A man made sure they weren't." He looked up. "A man?" "Rhett Hollis." Ellison's expression changed, something between surprise and grief. "Hollis. I knew him once. Fought beside him. Didn't think he was still breathing." Mae's voice trembled. "He isn't." The marshal's jaw tightened. He closed the satchel, nodding once. "Then I'll see to it his name means something again." She swallowed the ache rising in her throat. "That's all he wanted." Ellison's gaze softened. "You should rest. You've carried enough for 10 lifetimes." "I can't stay," she said. "Not yet." "Where will you go?" Mae looked past him, toward the horizon where the desert burned faintly under the morning sun. "Where the wind sounds like him." The marshal studied her a long moment, then nodded. "If the world ever needs to remember what real courage looks like, I'll tell them about Hollis, and about the woman who rode with him." She turned to leave, boots scuffing against the wooden step. "Don't tell them too much," she said quietly. "Let some of it stay ours." Outside, the wind rose again, carrying the desert's whisper through the street. She mounted her horse and rode toward the edge of town. Each hoofbeat was an echo of his, steady, certain, fading, but never gone. When the last building slipped behind her, she stopped and looked out across the endless plain. The sun was higher now, touching everything it could reach. The river that still ran shallow through the rocks, the far hills where he'd fallen, the sky that never stopped forgiving. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something small. Rhett's bandana, dust-stained and torn, the one he'd used to tie the satchel. She held it for a moment, then let it fly into the wind. It lifted, twirling once before the desert claimed it. Mae smiled through her tears. "You got your quiet now, Rhett Hollis," she whispered, "and I got mine." She turned her horse north and rode slow, the sun spilling light over her shoulders. The desert didn't feel empty anymore. It felt alive, full of the ghosts she chose to keep. Every mile forward was a kind of prayer. Every breath was his name, said softly enough that only the wind could hear it. The world kept turning, dust rising behind her, and for the first time since the rain-soaked night in Cinder Gulch, Mae Calder didn't feel hunted. She felt home. If this story has touched a tender place in your heart, let your light stay with us. Comment, share, and subscribe so this Western fire keeps burning for you.